Hi everyone, this is Madison Allison. I decided to use Padlet for my presentation today on bringing it all together. So to start, when I was thinking about online teaching, this quote stuck out to me. And it says, "What we are beginning to understand is that when structured effectively, online education has the capacity to facilitate more engagement with content, greater learner motivation, increased collaboration with the instructor, better computer skill development, and increased learning and understanding of subject matter. But how is all of this possible?" And that really sticks with me because that's a huge task that an educator has in the classroom and an online environment. So I put that out there just to show that I have learned so much in this class, and I think it's just really important to know that there is a huge task that is being accomplished. And I think that this class has showed us a good amount of those skills, but it takes so much to be an effective online teacher. But that brings me to really my true philosophy, and that is to be a guide on the side. And I had taken this from the Rice text, and number one is to make sure that my classroom is student-centered, that I am not lecturing my class, and that I'm allowing them to work with peers. I'm allowing them to collaborate and making sure that my students' needs are met. Are they the ones asking questions? Are they giving themselves assessments, their own self-assessments? Are they creating goals? So I think it's really important to have a student-centered classroom. Number two is to have a flexible environment. You know, the text was telling us that most people join an online learning environment because of the flexibility. So if they're in sports or if they travel a lot for something with their family, do they have to log in and be there every single day from 8 o'clock until 3:30? So it's really important to be flexible. Number three is collaboration and precipitation. This is probably the biggest point for me, because that's the whole philosophy behind online teaching and how we make that student-centered by allowing them to collaborate. And that is directly tied into the social presence model. If students are collaborating with each other and they're collaborating with the teacher, then they're able to have the effective association. They're able to feel a part of a community and that they belong somewhere. They're able to interact with each other, get to know each other, and learn from one another, and which in relation is tied with knowledge and experience. I mean, they're all coming to school with different background knowledge. So what can they learn from their peers? And if they're unable to collaborate, they're obviously not going to learn from their peers, and they can learn so much from their peers. And lastly is the instructor investment. So are they collaborating with their instructor? Or is the teacher stand back so much they don't even feel like they are there? Or is the instructor there too much? So it's just finding that nice balance of collaboration and how much your students are participating. Number four, I included 21st century skills because you're teaching in an online environment. It is the most perfect opportunity to make sure that your students are carrying and practicing those 21st century skills. I mean, 21st century skills is where our job force is going. It's in the normal education environment. We are really pushing our students and our teachers to work in that 21st century skills group. So it's really important to keep that in mind in an online environment. And lastly is relationships. In my classroom, I am a firm believer that if my students do not have a relationship with me, if my students do not feel they are loved by me, then the content will not come. Pedagogy has to come after your relationships, or your students will not really truly learn from you. They will learn some, but they will not learn to their maximum capacity that they can. So I still think it's super important to build those relationships, and especially important in an online environment because you're not face to face. It's going to be a little bit more difficult. So those are my 5 kind of most important things I think about when I'm thinking about my philosophy of online teaching. So with our social presence model here, there are different ways that we're going to allow our students to communicate in class. And those two are asynchronous and synchronous, different types of communication tools. So when I think about synchronous, I think about the ultimate way to discuss with your peers and your classmates. It's your real-time chat. It's your instant messenger. I really had a positive experience with using Zoom. When I taught my lesson using Zoom, I used some of my actual students, and they were in different parts of the school when we did this lesson, but it felt like we were together. So that's why I put a real feel, because it still makes you feel like you have your students with you, even though they're physically not there. And maybe that's me just reverting back to my comfort zone with being a face-to-face teacher, but I really felt like I was still having that connection with my students. That was really important to me. And when I think about asynchronous communication tools, I was kind of pondering what's so great about it. Because, people are very impatient. They don't want to wait for responses. But I found this quote in the text, in the Rice text, and it says, "Because of the time delay, these discussions tend to allow for more reflective and thoughtful responses." So I think that's really important to know that these types of communication skills are the time in your regular ed classroom, your face-to-face classroom where, you let your students pause, they work on something for a while, and they have that think time. If you're working in a real-time chat or an instant messenger, they don't really have too much time to think for themselves. So I think it's really important to have those asynchronous tools also. And some different examples I have are a vlog, so like a video blog. I love that idea because your students are able to still see expression on their faces, what their peers are looking like, how they're describing things. So I think a vlog would be a great idea. Any sort of blog or discussion post, and email. And then when we have that, we're back up to our social presence model, we're allowing our students to communicate through these skills, we get to our differentiation. So how are we going to make sure all the needs are met for our student? And the first part would be to provide multiple means of engagement. So, we have to recognize that students are all motivated by different things and they are all interested in different things. So are we providing them different ways to, interact with that content? Are we providing them different things to learn about that they are interested in? Are we giving them choices, different things that they can study instead of just telling them exactly what they are going to be doing? Are we giving them challenges and things like that? The next thing would be representation. So in my classroom, to make sure that I'm representing things differently is, to use text, use audio, use videos, lots of different things. Have glossaries, have text captions, make sure you have alternate text. And if your student is visually impaired in any way, make sure that you are providing students with hearing difficulties, extra visuals, making sure that our pigments and the colors that you're choosing for your worksheets or for your online discussions, that they are not too close in color, so the way that they contrast. Just thinking about those things in the back of your mind. And I also think it's really important to remember that these modifications that you're making will benefit all of your learners, not just one, not just two, but all of them. They can all benefit from that extra boost of that intervention, or your students will benefit from that extra boost of enrichment also. And then lastly would be the action of expression. So how are the students learning? Are they able to show their understandings in different ways? Are they able to show you through text, through audio, and through video? Are you going to allow them to use spell checkers and calculators if they're on the computer? Are they going to be allowed to use checklists? Are they going to create goals for themselves? Are you going to give them guided questions? So things along those lines, and I think it's really important that something that I want to do in my classroom, and especially if I'm an online teacher, is am I going to allow my students and teach them how to use self-explanation and self-assessment, which is a huge skill. And I think that it really ties into like an ultimate lifelong learning opportunity. Lastly, over here, after thinking about all of those things with online teaching, I have come to some ahas and questions. My first aha is that it is not the same as teaching in a classroom. Online teaching is extremely different, and that I read in the Rice text that strategies that you use in your face-to-face classroom are not necessarily going to work in an online classroom. So it's important that if you're making that switch over, to make sure you're trying plenty of different strategies and new things. The next thing is that there's more time to online teaching. And this is actually the exact opposite than I thought. I used to think that teachers who taught online had things graded easily for them. They had programs to teach online. They were really just a facilitator, but nothing extra than that. But that is totally not the case. They're spending hours and hours preparing and communicating. They don't have that face-to-face time where if a student thinks about something right away when they're not together, they can't just walk up to them. So they have a lot of more time put into online teaching. And the last aha I have is for tools for engagement, that there are so many amazing tools to keep your students engaged online. I wish that my district was one-to-one with technology, but we're not. So I don't get the opportunity to use technology as much in my own personal classroom. But if I had the opportunity to, or if I had the opportunity to teach online, I would take advantage of all the amazing tools there are out there to keep your learners engaged online. And lastly, I have two questions that I'm kind of pondering about still. My first one is for hands-on experiences. How are students getting those hands-on experiences with things like science and math manipulatives? When I think about using those online manipulatives and those online videos to watch different science experiments, I don't believe that that's the same as students actually getting to do them themselves. So I would really be interested to see if there's any studies that have been completed to see the difference of students who do these activities online versus in person, and that their level of understanding afterwards. And the second one is, I am just overall curious about how an online school is structured. So if I'm a second grade teacher in an online classroom, is that student with me all day? Are we logged in the computer all day? Am I putting up videos and then they're watching them like a flipped classroom tool? Are there opportunities for students and teachers to work one-on-one? Are there breaks throughout the day? Do the students have multiple teachers? Do the teachers have multiple students in multiple classes? I know that this probably differs for every online learning environment that you go through, but I'd just be curious to see a general how an online school is structured. So that's all I have for now today. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thanks so much.